Forgive me that I was not aware of this amendment until just a moment ago, and I'm trying to digest it, and it's several pages long, and it's making changes to the bill in numerous places, and I'm just trying to digest what's actually going on here. The good chairman indicated that this particular amendment was designed to allow personal care attendants to participate, and I'm just curious to understand why they would not have been allowed previously. Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Previously, they would not have been qualified because their employers, they would be qualified now clearly under the law because we are defining them as a qualified employer as a group.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I honestly don't understand the answer. A personal care attendant typically has one employer, certainly, and are they not currently covered under the proposed bill prior to the amendment because of the restriction on employers with less than 5 employees? Is that it? Through you, Madam President?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, this amendment clarifies that personal care attendants, certain personal care attendants who are employed currently and are eligible for collective bargaining, those PCAs would now be eligible to participate in this program.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I remember, a number of years ago when the previous governor took it upon himself to begin the process to formally unionize the personal care attendants, and there was a large debate in this legislature for several years. Actually, there were bills that did not make it over the finish line. And ultimately, it was done by executive order, where the dispute was whether or not personal care attendants are actually employees of the state. And the argument is based really on this notion that personal care attendants are compensated via state funds through the Medicaid waiver program. And despite the fact that they are compensated that way, they are really receiving benefits that are dedicated for the person that they work for, which is often described in our laws as the consumer. But that's typically a disabled person that hires someone as a personal care attendant to help them with their needs. And that person is really their employer. But this is why this is such a crazy issue, and I think that's why we're here today having this amendment, is that in the past, the majority decided to contort themselves into 1,000 different shapes to be able to say that people that actually work for a disabled person, a consumer, as a personal care attendant, were effectively employees of the state, but only employees of the state for very specific purposes. And over the years, there's been many, many other changes, including the ability for personal care attendants to collectively bargain, even though they don't have a common employer. So it's very interesting that this comes up today. And it's also very interesting that we're going to have a conversation about carving out one of the exceptions to the bill already. But I'm still not certain exactly what the reason was that precludes them from being eligible under the current law or the current bill that's before us. Is it simply, through you, Madam President, that they have the ability to collectively bargain with the state? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, this amendment is very specific to including those personal care attendants who have the right to collectively bargain to also have the right to participate in this program.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm trying to understand why that's special. Is there a reason why personal care attendants are different than other types of employees? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, what is absolutely clear is that were they not part of this statutorily included as a collective bargaining unit, as the good senator mentioned, they would normally be considered too small because it would be one employee working, or maybe in some cases a consumer might have 2 or 3 employees, but fall below the 5-employee requirement to qualify as an employer for this program. So clearly, as a unit, they are far more than 5, and that allows them to participate in this program.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As I mentioned, I have not had time to look at this amendment, but is it being suggested that we are actually changing the status of the consumer as well as the personal care attendant to carve them out so that they are now required as employers to participate and opt their employees into the program where they were not required to before because they may have less than 5 employees? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, these certain PCAs have a fiscal intermediary that will now be required to participate, to provide the information so that employees can participate in the program.
Thanks.
Under this amendment, we are allowing a group of employees, a group of workers that really will benefit from the opportunity to participate in this program and save for their retirement. So it's a great advantage to the employees, and one that we can successfully do through this amendment by recognizing the unit as a whole for participation in the program.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that answer, except I find it borderline comical. I mean, the fact of the matter is this program doesn't provide any benefit to any citizen of the state of Connecticut or any employee that they are not already able to achieve on their own. Is there anything in the current law, through you, Madam President, that precludes someone as a personal care attendant from purchasing a Roth IRA? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, no.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This debate is not starting off as I had planned because first and foremost, I didn't know I was going to have to deal with this amendment that I had not seen up until this point. I didn't know it was coming. And the fact of the matter is that it adds another wrinkle in this conversation, but it highlights many of the things that I'm planning on talking about in the discussion on the underlying bill. And the first one right out of the gate, and I may repeat this a bunch of different times today, is that somehow the majority wants to create the illusion that they're somehow providing a benefit. They're not providing a benefit at all. They're reducing freedom, and they're putting mandated requirements on individuals and businesses. There's no additional benefit being created whatsoever. And anyone who tries to put that out there into the world as if that's some sort of fact is misleading you, because the fact of the matter is the products that we're talking about already exist. And every citizen has the ability to go and purchase them if they choose. This just simply says that some people are going to be eligible to buy them through this process involving the state government, or they'll be mandated to require their employees to participate. No other changes, and no additional benefit will be provided to a single person. Just more government, less freedom, and less choice. That's what we're going to end up with here. And, you know, this amendment, you know, I really, really would like the opportunity to dissect it a lot more, but I can tell you that this is more and more contortions based on the other contorted policies of our past. I started explaining this process by which we took people who are individual employees of an individual disabled person, and the state of Connecticut, the majority and the governor decided to put them into a labor union with effectively treating the employer as the state of Connecticut, merely because it's the funding source. They did this, simultaneously with daycare providers because of the Care for Kids program, where effectively there is a benefit that goes to parents who have children, and that family would be eligible for a benefit through the state of Connecticut, and they go and hire a daycare provider, and now the state is saying, well, the daycare provider is not the employer, the state is the employer. That's just not the case. And that's the same thing here with these PCAs. The consumer, the disabled person, is the employer. They're the ones that is actually eligible and receiving the benefit, which they are using for the purpose of hiring help in the form of PCA. I mean, what an unbelievable stretch. And it's really remarkable to me that we are, on one hand, saying that this program should restrict people that are able to collectively bargain, but we're going to carve out this other group of people that can collectively bargain, which is effectively what the amendment is about, is what I'm gathering. And we're also going to say, well, this particular individual in this particular industry is employed by somebody who has less than 5 employees. Well, which is it, is the question. Is the employer the state, which has way more than 5 employees, or is the employer the disabled person, which may only have 1 or 2 or 3 PCAs that work for them? It's a mess, frankly. And it's a result of the fact that there have been so many different distortions and contortions made in this particular industry, all for the purpose of setting up a mechanism to allow for the unionization of the PCAs, which is to a political benefit for the majority. That's why it's all happened, and that's why we're here today, and we've got to make these exceptions in this particular proposal before us. I'm going to oppose the amendment, Madam President. I'm just anxious to get onto the bill. And it's not because I don't believe that PCAs should have access to retirement vehicles. They do. They do. Any person within the sound of my voice who wants to buy a retirement plan can buy one. It's not that hard to do. And the state of Connecticut's got no business setting up a scheme to compete directly with people in the private sector that provide these things. You would have far better results if you were dealing with a true professional who's got a license to talk to you about these products. And generally speaking, they don't charge any upfront commissions or anything. You're not any more adversely impacted than you would be in this going through the MyCT savings program. But again, we'll talk much more about this after the vote on the amendment, which I encourage my colleagues to vote against. Thank you.
Will you remark further on the amendment that is before the chamber? Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. I would urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this amendment, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
And we will have a roll call vote. Will you remark further on the amendment? Will you remark further on the amendment? If not, the machine is open. Mr. Clerk, announce the vote on the amendment, please.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. An immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment A, for substitute for Senate Bill number 136, an act making changes to the Connecticut Retirement Security Program statutes.
Is locked. Mr. Clerk, please give us the tally on the amendments.
Senate Amendment A, total number voting 36, total voting yea 24, total voting nay 12, absent non voting 0.
And the amendment fails, and we are now discussing the bill. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. On the bill as amended, I would like to make brief comments.
And I want to correct, sorry, that the amendment did pass. I want to correct the record there. And Senator Kushner, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Now that we've amended the bill, I would like to discuss the changes that we're making to the Connecticut Retirement Security Program. This bill will address several changes. First of all, it reduces how long an employee must work for their employer to be a covered employee. Under this program, employee now will be covered after 30 days. It also sets an automatic, it also increases the contribution rate, the default contribution rate, which is currently 3%. It moves it to 5%, and it allows the comptroller to have an automatic annual increases to the default contribution level from a maximum of 1% per year to a maximum of 10%. There's also within this bill a notice requirement and financial penalties for non-compliant employers. This also gives certain liability protections to the program's advisory board members and employers covered by the program. It expands the comptroller's program and administering the program to, among other things, enter into certain contracts with intergovernmental agreements. It repeals the requirement for the comptroller to set up and maintain a website for qualified employers and vendors. Essentially, we're taking a program that the comptroller has gotten off the ground very effectively, and we're making it better. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill as amended.
Thank you. Will you remark further, Senator Sampson?
Thank you very much, Madam President. So I'm a little disappointed that the amendment passed, although I'm not surprised. I think that the amendment just convolutes this particular policy even further, and that's a concern of mine because I don't think this policy needs to even exist as it is. And what's really happening is that we're making the situation more complex for employees in the state of Connecticut and for their employers as well in many cases. And I don't think any of that's necessary. There's no reason for this program to exist. As I mentioned from the outset, the program effectively opts people in despite their desire, whether they want this or not, to a retirement fund, which any of us can choose to participate in anytime we want. The difference here is that in their infinite wisdom, the majority believes that people aren't smart enough to make that decision on their own, and they're going to be opting them in, and you'll have to make a conscious determination to opt out if you choose. And I'm very thankful that that opt-out at least exists in this particular case, unlike some other policies, paid family leave, for example, which we discussed just recently, which is another payroll tax that effectively people do not have an opportunity to opt out of. Here, at least the opt-out exists. But I will tell you that this program has got a lot of concerns for me. The fact of the matter is that if you are someone who is concerned about preparing for your retirement, you have a multitude of options in the world to begin that process. And every one of them is superior to letting the state government of the state of Connecticut take a hold of your retirement situation, in my mind. And I'm going to illustrate some of those concerns in this conversation today. The good chairman mentioned some of the changes in the policy since it was adopted. If I recall, this program was passed in this Senate chamber back in 2018, I think, when the Senate was 18-18 and required a tie break. But then the actual law didn't go into effect until sometime later. But that's how we got here. And I know that it was debated for a number of years prior to that. So it's not exactly something that is non-controversial. It's something that I think makes a clear dividing line between the political parties and the schools of thought about the role of government. And for me, the role of government is to protect the rights of citizens. And first and foremost among the rights of citizens is the freedom for citizens to make their own choices, particularly about who they want to do business with. And that's going away in this legislation. This policy being presented to the people of Connecticut as a benefit is really a reduction in their own autonomy and their own freedom. That's what it is. You already have the freedom to engage in commerce with the people of your choosing. You already have the freedom to buy a Roth IRA, and you can choose who you want to buy it from. You can compare different financial planners, different organizations, and you can decide who deserves your business. You can also go in great depth and learn all about the different products that are available to you as a consumer, so you can make intellectual decisions about your future and your finances. But again, the state of Connecticut doesn't care about that. What they care about is power and control. They care about the fact that they are going to take control of your finances. If this program was simply an opt-in program, I probably still wouldn't support it because I wouldn't see a need for it. But the fact that it's not an opt-in program, the fact that it is an opt-out program, the fact that they are putting you into this without asking you first, should be the first concern that every person within the sound of my voice has. Why? If it's such a great thing, why aren't people lining up to sign up? Why do they have to put people into this program without asking them? I have a few questions through you, Madam President. The first one would be, why is the time frame in the current law, which suggests that an employer is got to sign their employees up after they've been at work for a period of 120 days, being changed to a mere 30 days? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, there are a couple of reasons that we're changing this to 30 days. Clearly, the earlier and sooner an employee starts saving, the better in the long term for that employee. Additionally, we've heard from employers that most of the benefit programs that they are administering as an employer kick in after 30 days, and for employers it will be easier to have the program start at the same time as their other benefit programs.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So it was noted that employers in many cases already offer some sort of similar program. Is that correct? Through you, Madam President?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, no, it was not alluded to similar programs. It was other benefit programs. If an employer currently has a similar program, a retirement savings program, then they are not a qualified employer to participate in this plan.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. Isn't there a concern, through you, Madam President, about whether or not someone who has been employed for just 30 days will stay on as a permanent employee? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. During the first 60 days that an employee is first enrolled in this program, there are some times where there's turnover and there's appropriate measures taken here to where an employee has not already selected a vehicle for that money to be, for their contributions to be held in another fund. So it's easier to then, if they were to opt out or if they were to leave the employer, then there would be a vehicle to do that.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I notice also, by the way, that in that same section regarding covered employees, lines 32 through 37, I know it's current law, but being that we're changing all of these other parameters, we're going to be impacting a whole new cross-section of Connecticut citizens that are going to be impacted by this. I notice it says that it is only applies, covered employees must be 19 years of age or older. And I'm curious why the age 19? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. That's the current statute. That's the current law, and we are not seeking to change it.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I think I stated in my question that it's the current law. And we're not prohibited from discussing current law, by the way, in the chamber. The fact of the matter is we are changing the current law by saying that this requirement about 19 and older applies to a whole bunch of people it didn't apply to before. So in that sense, while the statute is not changing, the impact of that statute is changing, and that is absolutely relevant to our conversation. And I'm just curious why we chose the age 19 and not age 18. And I'd like an answer to that through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. In answer to the question, I don't know why we chose the age of 19 instead of 18.
Oh.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and thank you for the answer. I am disappointed we don't know because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the age of majority in the state of Connecticut is 18. I know that this body has chosen on numerous occasions to dictate to people that are older than 18 that they have a limited amount of rights about their choice to purchase certain products and so forth. But the fact of the matter is that 18 remains the age of majority, and there's no legitimate reason that I can come up with to say that somebody who's 18 versus 19 should have a limited amount of ability to participate in such a program. In some respects, I'm glad for those 18-year-olds that they can make their own choices versus the 19-year-olds that are captured in this language. The other change that was alluded to was the mandatory minimum capture of income that is occurring in this bill, because effectively that's what's happening. Is the employer is being asked by the state of Connecticut to capture part of your paycheck, and that's currently 3%, and that amount under this language, if this bill becomes law, will increase to 5%. What is the reason for the increase in that percentage? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, we are making this change as it will reflect then the current federal standard that comes under the Secure 2.0 Act of 2022. The current federal standard for 401ks is 5% minimum. And I think that what we're looking to do is to mirror that, because that standard was created in order to ensure that when a person retires, they have sufficient funds that will help them live a good life in retirement.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I don't know anything about this Secure 2.0 program. This sounds like some guidelines created by the federal government advising people to make intelligent choices about how much that they put into their future investment for their retirement. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but obviously more is better. And that has very little to do with the question, which is why are we capturing more of someone's paycheck? I mean, presumably, 6% would be better than 5%. 7% would be better than 6%. I'm just curious why the original number was 3%, if that wasn't a good number. Why are these numbers simply arbitrary? Is what I'm getting at, and I think in fact they are. Through you, Madam President, isn't there a limitation on the amount that can be contributed to a Roth IRA in a given one-year period? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And what is that limit? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. If you'll give me a moment, I'll look it up.
We will stand at ease. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. There is a limit of $7,000 in a year that a person can put into a Roth IRA.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So, did I hear the limit was 7,000? Is that correct? Yes. And I'm aware that the limit is actually increased if you're over a certain age. I believe it's age 50. I might have my own reasons for knowing that. Through you, Madam President, let me just ask this question, which is, if the contribution here is being increased from 3% to 5%, isn't there a situation where some employees that are captured under this are going to end up having more than their limit collected through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, in fact, the plan is devised in a way that the contribution would stop when they reach the 7,000. It's only happened to very fewer than 5 so far out of the 25,571 people participating in the plan.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I kind of missed the answer. I heard there was 25,000 people currently participating in the plan, which is a very, very important topic that I do want to get into. But I missed the first part of that answer, which the question is all about whether or not people are in danger of putting too much in and potentially getting fined by the federal government through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. As I answered, the plan stops when a person reaches the limit.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. How does the plan stop? I mean, assuming that this could be very confusing, if there's a particular employee that has maybe 2 or 3 different employers over the span of a year, and these funds are being taken by a payroll service and forwarded to the state. I mean, how does it work? I mean, can they possibly be alerted to know exactly when someone meets their 7,000 threshold through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. The deduction stops when the person reaches that limit, and the fund administration is aware when someone is getting close to that limit, and the deductions are stopped.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Well, I appreciate the answer, and I think it's a great answer, except that I think in the real world, that's not exactly how it's going to work out. I think the fact of the matter is that these types of things are going to take time, and the administrator can't possibly keep track of everything that's happening and interacting with employers and interacting with payroll services and to get it dialed in. And I'll tell you from my own personal perspective, I'm putting in the exact maximum every year, 7,500, because I can, and I'm very, very earnest in my desire to get the maximum in there. I don't want 7,200 in there. I don't want $6,811. I want 7,500 because I can get 7,500 in there, and I would like very much to see that happen. And I do that because I'm in control of that. I'm taking the initiative to make sure I know what I'm doing to make sure that I'm making an appropriate investment. I noticed, by the way, that this program invests in Roth IRAs. Is there a reason why a Roth IRA was chosen instead of a traditional IRA?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. The Roth IRA was chosen because it's post-tax.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that answer. Is there an advantage of a Roth IRA over a traditional IRA for every person participating in this plan through you?
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for allowing me the time to get technical advice on this, because obviously I'm not a specialist on Roth IRAs, but it has been chosen because it has a benefit to employees when they retire because of the tax benefits that you have in a Roth IRA as opposed to a traditional IRA.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I appreciate the good chairman for indicating that she's not an expert on Roth IRAs, and I'm not either. And I would venture to guess that I don't know that anyone in the circle is a licensed financial advisor, and yet we're comfortable taking a vote on this particular policy. At least some of us are going to vote in favor of it based on that comfort. I'm going to vote no, mainly because I don't feel comfortable deciding the financial future of other people who have the freedom to make their choices on their own. But that's the difference in how we view the world. I'm also quite confident that there are some people that will get a benefit out of a traditional IRA that exceeds the benefit from a Roth IRA, but their participation in this program does not give them that option. And I just want to remind people that their participation is not optional, at least from the outset. They're going to be opted in, and then you have got to make an affirmative decision to opt back out of the program. Are you able to recover the funds that were opted in initially if you opt out at some point in the future through you, Madam President?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. These are individual accounts, so those accounts are yours and no one else's.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that answer, but it doesn't really go to my question. If I'm a employee in the state and my employer begins this process and they start taking the 5% out of my paycheck, and after a few months I finally go to my boss and I'm like, well, what the heck is this 5%? Because you can be certain that's going to happen. And I would like my money back because I need it now. Am I able to get my dollars back through you, Madam President?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. An individual who decides to opt out, they can move that individual account, the monies in that account. It depends on where they move it. There might be tax penalties, but in fact, in many cases, they can move it to another vehicle or they can cash it out, and there's no penalty on the money that is put in. Only there would be a penalty on the growth. If you want to give me a pause, I can get a further answer on that.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just curious. I mean, I understand that there's a process here, and the money is going to be taken out of the paycheck. That's going to be given to the administrator, which we're going to talk about that at some length in a minute also. But it's going to go to that administrator, and then once it goes to the administrator, they're going to put it in some sort of temporary fund. And then from the temporary fund, the Roth IRA is going to be purchased. My question is, based on each different step of the process, but really what matters to me is if I discover this as an employee 3 or 4 months after it's been going on, and that money's already been invested in a retirement vehicle, am I eligible to recover my funds without any penalty or fine from the government through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. That would be subject to IRS requirements, and there could be a penalty.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So there you have it. There is a distinct possibility that people will be penalized when they try and recover their funds, when they discover after several months of having their payroll deducted and invested in this investment vehicle. And again, look, I just want to be very clear here. I mean, I get the perspective of the folks that are putting this out there. They really think that they're doing something good. At least I hope that that's the case. They think that they're helping people find a way to preserve money for their retirement and do something more responsible and make sure that it actually it has some value in the future. I get that. I totally get that. I think that's great. But you do not do that by government force. You do not do that by mandating this to occur. You do not do that by putting requirements on employers without compensating them for it. You do not do it without giving people real choice about how it happens. And that's what's happening here. People are not being advised. They're not being given a choice. They are not being respected. The money that belongs to them is their money. And for whatever reason, there are people in this building who seem to forget that. They don't think that it's that person's money. But it is. When there is an employer and employee relationship out in the world, they're making a decision on their own. It's got nothing to do with us. And if someone's earning a paycheck, that's their money. It's not the state of Connecticut's money. It's not the comptroller's money. It's not up to us to decide what they want to do with it. If they want to buy sugary soft drinks with it, they should be able to. If they want to be irresponsible, they should be able to. Now, of course, I hope that people are responsible. But the fact of the matter is, we live in a free society, thank God. And it's very important to me that it stays a free society. And I know that there are people who think that there are citizens who aren't capable of making these decisions on their own, so we're going to make them for them. Well, that's not a good thing to do. It doesn't make you noble or charitable. It doesn't make you a good moral person to decide something else for someone else. If you want to teach people, if you want to share information, if you want to bring the horse to the water, that's fine. But it is not the obligation of the state of Connecticut. We are not the lords and kings of our constituents. We do not get to decide what they do. They get to decide. It's very frustrating to debate these bills. Every day I come in here and there's another attack on the individual freedom of people to live their lives. Do you know that the number one thing my constituents tell me when I ask them what they want from government? Leave me alone. That's what they say. Leave me alone. Don't tell me what kind of car I got to drive. Stop taking money out of my paycheck and spending it on things that I don't have an interest in. So I get it. But don't try and tell the world you're helping people. You're not. You're deceiving them by making them believe that they don't have the freedom to make their own choices. Because they do. There's a lot of pieces of this bill. And initially, I was going to go on for quite some time talking about the ramifications of the language in the bill, and I'm still going to cover some of that. But I have a lot of amendments I want to discuss, too, because I'm hopeful that there is a potential that we might find a way to improve this bill in some way, shape, or form so it is not such a detrimental impact on the freedom of the people I represent. Let's just talk about something else really quick, which is that the good chairman mentioned that she doesn't have the expertise to really answer the questions about the financial aspects of Roth IRA and so forth. And I agreed that I don't either, and I think that's probably the case across the board for members of this chamber and the House as well. But let me ask this question. Who is running this program through you, Madam President?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. The comptroller is running this program.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I don't want to speak about the current comptroller. He's a fine man and a nice guy, and I like him thoroughly. But the fact of the matter is that the comptroller could be anybody. What are the requirements in our laws through you, Madam President, to become the comptroller of the state of Connecticut?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we'll just take a brief pause, and I will look it up in statute.
Thank you. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. In our brief research here, we are finding no specific requirements to run for and hold the office of comptroller.
Usually you have to be an elector.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Yes, there are no real specific requirements. Basically, you've got to be a citizen, you've got to be an adult, and you've got to win enough votes. And I mean, no disrespect to the current comptroller or any past or future one, but it could be Joe Schmo. As long as you win enough votes, then effectively you can be elected to be comptroller of the state. But the position of the majority is that we need to put someone in charge of making determinations about all the employees of the state's finances because they're Joe Schmo, and maybe they're not smart enough to be able to figure it out on their end, on their own. That's my understanding. But yet the comptroller also is not an expert in being a on Roth IRAs. Or am I mistaken about that? Is there anything in the Constitution, Madam President, that would require the comptroller have the background to be able to administer a financial device such as a Roth IRA? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. No.
Senator Sampson.
Through you, Madam President. Is there anyone else in the state that can sell Roth IRAs that doesn't have to be a licensed practitioner? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just, looking, by the way, at the state constitution, I went and captured all of the references to the comptroller just for fun. And I noticed, by the way, that Section 24 lays out the duties of the comptroller. And it says, the comptroller shall adjust and settle all public accounts and demands except grants and orders of the General Assembly. He shall prescribe the mode of keeping and rendering all public accounts. He shall ex officio be one of the auditors of the accounts of the treasurer. The General Assembly may assign him to other duties in relation to his office, that's key language, and to that of the treasurer, and shall prescribe the manner in which his duties shall be performed. And I'm guessing this is the loophole. The General Assembly may assign him to other duties in relation to his office that allowed the creation of this program to begin with. But I think it's also quite clear reading this that the fact of the matter is that the comptroller was envisioned to only have to do with public money. The public accounts, the money of the state of Connecticut, not the private money held by private citizens. I also think that it's a worthwhile endeavor if there was ever a legal challenge about this entire set of policies. Because I believe that the framework here, and maybe the history of the establishment of the Office of the Comptroller, might tell us a more vivid story about why it is dedicated to public accounts. And I think it's also kind of obvious to anyone that understands the way our system of laws and justice works in this country that really the government shouldn't have any control over people's private funds. And that's what I have as a concern here, is that this is an immense policy change or new direction for our state government to engage in actively spending or investing, if you prefer, someone else's money. You know, we had a bill last year about financial literacy. I didn't support it because I thought it was a mandate on my local school district, but I like the idea of teaching financial literacy. I think that, schools should engage in that. I think that the government should make it an active, ongoing, process that we try and inform our citizens on smart decision-making to preserve their funds so that they have a decent retirement. Those are all great things. But to actually take that person's money and to use it in a manner that they have not approved of beforehand strikes me as theft. Now, you can go back and say, okay, well, they do have the ability to opt out, and maybe there's a mechanism they can retrieve their funds, or why would they want their money back? It's in a better place now. You can say all those things, but the fact of the matter is you're taking their money without asking first. And I know if somebody takes my money without asking first, I get angry. And I'm here standing before the circle today, angry because the state has already set up this plan to take money from my constituents without asking first, and now they want to take more. They want to increase the limit from 3% to 5%. And now there is another section in this bill, through you, Madam President. Can I ask the good chairwoman, what is the maximum amount that the comptroller, who we've already established does not have to be qualified in any sort of financial planning, can take from someone without asking for them to opt in, through you?
Thank you, Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Could you restate that question?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I was asking what the maximum amount of percentage that the comptroller can take from someone's paycheck under this language.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Without the interaction of the employee asking for a greater or smaller deduction, then the deduction under this proposed bill will be 5%.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I understand that this bill allows a deduction up to 10%. Are you suggesting that the comptroller does not have to, or that the employee would have to opt in for them to be increased to 10%, through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The effective date, it would begin at 5%, and that's as of on or after July 1st, 2025. I'm sorry, 2024. After that, the comptroller can automatically increase it no more than 1% in a given year to a maximum of 10%.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate that answer. So that's a correction from the previous answer, it sounds like. So 10%. And it's very clear, I'm reading on line 183, that the comptroller, in consultation with the board, which is a whole other conversation we probably won't get to tonight, establish an annual automatic increase in contribution level for participants who have not made an affirmative election. So literally, if you are just getting direct deposit and you're not paying really close attention to what's going on with your paycheck, and you're just assuming that the government takes out taxes anyway, that somehow this money that's going into your bank account by automatic deduction or payroll deduction is fine, but you may discover at some point in the future that, in fact, the comptroller's been taking as much as 10% of your pay, in addition, by the way, to all of the other taxes, including your 2.5% for your paid family medical leave and your Social Security and your FICA and all of your other taxes. That's all being taken out of there. They're also going to be taken as much as 10% and at least 5% if this bill passes. This is somewhat shocking stuff, I got to tell you. The fact that I think that the majority of people across our state don't know about this, and honestly, I think very few people even know about the existing program. I have the data here that shows the number of people that are currently enrolled. And I will tell you, Mr. President, it is a very low number. It's shockingly low. Through you, Mr. President, how many employees are in the state of Connecticut? Through you.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe it was somewhere about 1 million the last time I checked, 1.3 million, 1 million to 1.3 million.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In fact, the numbers from the Connecticut State Department of Labor indicate that the total payroll is 1.7 million, up 18,000 jobs from March of 2023. Now, obviously, not all of those folks are going to be captured in this particular bill because some of them are able to collectively bargain. Can I ask through you, Mr. President, why have we carved out people that can collectively bargain through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have not carved out everyone who collectively bargains. If a person is covered by a collective bargaining agreement and they don't have an employer retirement program such as this, then they would be a qualified employer, and those employees would participate in the program.
Thank you very much for that answer through you, Mr. President. Are you aware, Madam Chairman, through you, Mr. President, of collective bargaining agreements that do not take into consideration a retirement benefit through you?
Senator Kushner.
I am not aware of every collective bargaining agreement in the state of Connecticut. There is nothing that requires an employer engaged in collective bargaining. There's nothing in the law that requires them to negotiate a retirement vehicle.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I've got so many notes on my desk and so many different directions to take this conversation. It's very difficult to decide which part of this to attack next. But the fact of the matter is that I think that what's happening is that the bill selectively chooses different categories of people and decides whether or not they will have more or less freedoms to engage in their own decision making as far as their retirement. And I object to that. I think that every person is born with the right to make their own decision regarding their retirement, and all this body has the ability to do is to limit that. And what's happened is that they've limited it in so many confusing ways now that we have to go and peel back the onion to figure out who fits into what box to find out exactly what their situation is. The fact of the matter is that despite the fact that you might have 1.7 million employees in the state, and I would say the majority of them probably qualify under this language because, you're talking about, state employees make up a certain percentage, and then there are collectively bargained employees that have benefits. I mean, the number's still going to be over 1 million, I would suggest. It's definitely more than half of the people in the state of Connecticut are going to fit into the category. And yet, right now, the most recent numbers that I have, Mr. President, is from March 31st of this year. So we're talking a month ago, effectively. The total number of employees that are registered in the program is a mere 25,435 employees. Can I ask, Mr. President, through you, do we know why there is such unbelievably low participation, even though this program's been around for a couple of years, through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. In fact, many employers in the state of Connecticut that are employers that employ more than 5, first of all the employers that have fewer than 5 or fewer employees are not allowed to participate in this program. An employer with 5 or more, many of them offer some retirement vehicle that puts them outside of this program. So the number, I would say that the number of employees that are eligible to be covered under this is not as great as the good senator would suggest. I do know that of those that are participating, a very small percentage of them opt out of the program.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I don't disagree with anything the good chairwoman said, except what is that number? How many employees are we talking about? How many employees are actually eligible right now to be enrolled in MyCT Savings through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do not have that number.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I hope that people who are watching this shake their head as many times as I do engaged in these debates. We earlier, I asked, I think, what was it? Oh, what the required amount for a maximum contribution for a Roth IRA is. And the chairwoman did not have that answer. And I mean, no disrespect to her, but to me, that ought to be something I think is a key ingredient of this conversation. To know how many eligible employees there are statewide, to have that information. Those are very, very important things. But I'm not really concerned with the chairwoman. What I'm concerned with is the fact that we are entrusting the management of this program to the comptroller of the state of Connecticut. Again, no disrespect to the current comptroller. I'm just suggesting that the comptroller, as a body, as a elected official, as a position, doesn't have any specific requirements to be able to manage this program. And I want to know how the comptroller proposes to be able to manage this financial planning operation without having a license. Is there some sort of exception in the law, through you, Mr. President, that says that the comptroller can sell securities and manage a retirement system without having a licensed for financial securities, through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have created in statute the ability of the comptroller to administer this plan, and he does so with the assistance of an advisory board with people who are have expertise in this field, as well as is able to hire people, which is very typical of any office that has very specialty needs. He is empowered, authorized to hire the personnel necessary with the expertise to administer the plan.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I appreciate that answer. And that board is all well and good, except that if we went through every instance in the bill language before us and pointed out every circumstance where the comptroller gets to make decisions unilaterally, I think that that would change the view of the fact that there's a check and a balance, because there really isn't. Not only that, the comptroller gets to unilaterally adopt regulations in several different places for different handling of everything from the way that the money is taken to whether or not employers are penalized for failing to follow the prescripted requirements that are laid out for them. The comptroller, in Section 4, it says, in conducting the business of the program shall act with care, skill in financial planning, prudence and diligence under the circumstances then prevailing, that a prudent person acting in a like capacity and familiar with such matters would use in the context of an enterprise of like character and with like aims. Well, that's some very nice language, but it certainly lays out something different than reality, because the comptroller is not required to have any of the skills or familiarity with such matters in the conduct of engaging in financial planning. It also mentions, I don't want to go too far from that, but it also says that under subsection 3 of Section 4, on lines 219 through 224, it says that the comptroller, in conducting the business of the program, shall act, and it says, for the exclusive purposes of providing benefits to participants and beneficiaries and defraying reasonable expenses. Through you, Mr. President, does that mean that the state of Connecticut, via the comptroller's determination of what's reasonable, can take money out of the investments, quote unquote, that are being made on behalf of Connecticut employees, through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that this language is understood to mean that reasonable expenses can be, will be, should be the subject of an audit, and if they were found not to be reasonable, then those adjustments would be made. This is standard language in plans such as this.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Mr. President, forgive me. I'm just so used to seeing Madam President up there, but you look great in that position as well, Senator.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, the chairwoman just mentioned, similar plans. Well, there are no similar plans. We don't have another similar plan where the comptroller or any other state office is running a financial planning operation for private citizens. So I don't know where that would come from. And I know that I'm running out of time here, Mr. President, so let me just get right to some of the larger concerns that I have. There's so much in this bill that I really wanted to tackle, and it's unfortunate we're not going to get to it, because I will tell you that the deeper you dig into this particular policy, the more you realize that we are grossly deviating from what the proper role of the state government actually is in the protection of the rights and freedoms of the citizens that we represent, that we work for as their representatives. I want to offer an amendment right out of the gate to take care of one of the concerns that I've already raised. Through you, Mr. President, the clerk is in possession of LCO 4954. This is a very straightforward amendment that says that we're going to require the comptroller to have a licensed securities broker, a license, the same as anyone selling these securities. I ask that the clerk call this amendment, that I be allowed to summarize, and I think that's it. Through you.
The motion is on adoption of the amendment.
LCO 4954, Senate Amendment Schedule B.
The senator has asked for the waive of reading and seek leave of the chamber to summarize. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I mentioned very briefly, a very simple amendment. It adds a very simple bit of language, 3 sentences or so, that say that there shall be a comptroller to be elected in the same manner as other state officers in accordance with the provisions of Section 9-181. The comptroller shall be an elector of the state and would add this requirement, a licensed securities broker. I move adoption. I think it's a common sense thing to do, that we would require this in any future comptroller that is engaged in this activity, that they actually have the knowledge and know-how to engage in it. Through you, Mr. President. I move for, I've already moved adoption, I believe, but if I haven't, I move adoption, I'd like a roll call.
Roll call vote in the Senate. No. Sorry, Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would urge my colleagues to vote no on the amendment. I believe it would be a bad idea to put this requirement on our comptroller for this election or any election. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no.
Mr. Clerk.
An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment B.
Is voted. Mr. Clerk, will you please announce? The machine has been locked. Mr. Clerk, will you please announce the tally?
Total number voting 36. Those voting yea 12. Those voting yea 24. Those absent 0.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm not surprised. It seems like the typical course of action is that amendments offered by the minority tend to fail on a party line. What's sad about that is that it doesn't really even matter whether or not the amendment is a viable amendment that would improve the quality of the bill, and that's very disappointing, because I have a tendency to draft a lot of amendments. And some of them I can understand the majority, suggesting are completely out of line, or would, quote unquote gut their bill or something like that. But a lot of times those amendments are also quite reasonable, and I thought that one would make tremendous sense, because the way I understand it is that we're entrusting a comptroller, this or any future comptroller, in a very, I think, what is easily understood to be a delicate position. You're dealing with the funds of the people of Connecticut. Is there any protection through you, Mr. President, against the funds that are purchased through the comptroller's program? Could they lose money through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes.
Senator Sampson.
And through you, Mr. President, will the comptroller have any say in the actual choice of the investment vehicles that are being provided through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that the good senator be very specific in the question that you're asking in this regard.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm asking if the comptroller has any input into which funds are selected, not by the actual employee, but by the program to be made available to employees.
Senator Kushner, do you care to respond?
Thank you, Mr. President. The program that is run by the comptroller hires fund administrators with experience to make those decisions.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. That doesn't answer my question. I understand that there's a lot of other people involved in the process. I want to know very specifically whether or not the comptroller has a say. Can the comptroller say, no, I want you to choose these funds, or I believe that we should choose from among these other funds? Will the comptroller have the ability to provide input in those choices through you?
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think I can answer any differently except to say that the way funds that are invested are done in this program and in other programs like this, there's fund administrators who have that expertise, and they make the determinations on where the investments are made.
Senator Sampson. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it's quite clear from the bill language. I certainly understand what the chairwoman is mentioning, but I think that has to do with the actual person who's running the retirement vehicle, the actual IRA. They're purchasing different stocks to assemble a mutual fund effectively. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about the funds available, whether we're going to have Fidelity or we're going to have some other, different companies' products available. That decision, I believe, is very clear. It's in the bill that the comptroller will be able to make and, maybe not have the carte blanche decision-making ability, but he's going to have input in that. And my concern, and I had another amendment drafted, which I'm not going to offer because I don't think it's going to make any difference. It'll probably fail on a party line anyway. The fact of the matter is that I'm concerned that the comptroller I'm not, again, speaking about this particular comptroller, I'm talking about any comptroller in any party at any point from here forward could engage in choosing different types of investments based on things other than their financial solvency or future prosperity. We have had other elected officials, treasurers, for example, that have engaged in different types of political activity in direct contradiction to what was best for the financial situation of the state of Connecticut. And I had drafted an amendment basically prohibiting the comptroller from being able to invest in ESG. Folks listening might know what that is. Those are funds that are dedicated to political purposes even more than financial ones. And I would like to see that prohibited. Again, so much to cover, so little time. I also would note a section in the bill that provides not only that the comptroller has this ability to populate regulations, which we've talked about briefly, there's also a section which is remarkable, and I believe it is in section 3 near the end, And it says the comptroller may, in administering the program, enter into intergovernmental agreements, cooperative agreements, reciprocal agreements, and so on. This is tremendous and broad power. Why are we not leaving that up to the legislature to decide? That's another worthwhile conversation that we should have engaged in. But since we are up against the time limit that I've agreed to, we're going to just offer one final amendment. And I've got to choose from two that I have left. And one of them is to reduce the default contribution from 3% to 0%, effectively making it so employees have to opt in. I think that's a very good amendment, and effectively it leaves it up to the employee to decide whether or not they want to participate and how much they want to participate. To me, that's the most clean way to handle this situation. There's also the possibility of my other amendment, which says we should remove the requirement that the employer enroll employees, because I think it's wrong to go ahead and mandate employers to engage in this activity without ever compensating them and not even recognizing that they don't work for the state of Connecticut. The fact of the matter is the employers of the state of Connecticut have no obligation to the state itself. They're in business based on their freedom to be so. They don't owe anything to the state of Connecticut. And the idea that we're going to create this bureaucratic scheme that says that they have to, without compensation, enroll people in this retirement plan, and that they can be penalized, even fined, have the Attorney General knock on their door for failing to provide these services, when that's not their business. It's just shocking to me, the lengths that the majority will go to have power and control over the residents of this state. It's really, really shocking. There's no question why we are often ranked near the bottom when it comes to economic viability, why businesses shy away from Connecticut, because it is a dangerous environment to operate in. You don't know what this state government is going to do to you next. I think I'm going to go with the First Amendment, though. Mr. President, the clerk is in possession of LCO 3970. I ask that this amendment be called and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO 3970, Senate Amendment Schedule C.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a very straightforward amendment, effectively turning this from an opt-out program to an opt-in program. Still not ideal in my mind because, as I mentioned from the outset, every citizen of Connecticut can already go and buy a Roth IRA. You don't need the comptroller. You don't need the state Senate. You don't need any of us involved. You have the freedom to go do that right now. And I would encourage that because it seems like that's the only way to avoid the state getting involved and effectively choosing what your options are, and also potentially charging you what I pointed out a moment again are reasonable expenses. I move adoption, and I'd like a roll call vote.
Any further remarks on the amendment? Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the good senator pointed out, this would really effectively change this in such a material way, this program, that it would no longer be the effective program that it is today for employees to save for their retirement. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no.
Mr. Clerk.
An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. We are voting on Senate Amendment Schedule C.
Have all the senators voted? The machine is now locked. Mr. Clerk, please announce the tally.
Total number voting 36. Those voting yea 12. Those voting yea 24. Those absent none.
Amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I was distracted by some sounds in the room. Mr. President, I Again, disappointed about the result of the latest roll call vote on the amendment. Again, not surprised, but disappointed. We had an opportunity to make this program back into an optional, opt-in type program rather than an opt-out program as it currently stands. And I thought that would have been a reasonable compromise, especially since I don't believe that a number of us support the existence of this program, which competes with the private sector as it is. I'm just going to wrap up very quickly and point out some things that we learned in this conversation. We know that this program has been around for a couple of years, and it has not really taken off. The fact of the matter is that there are remarkably few enrolled employers and employees in the program thus far. We know that this program competes directly with the private sector. As I pointed out, nothing is being offered to Connecticut citizens, employers, or employees that they cannot obtain on their own. In fact, this program will create a number of limitations for people on their choices and their freedom. The desire to participate at all to begin with is not even being left up to individual citizens. You are going to have your payroll deducted 5% if this bill passes, and maybe as much as 10% at the discretion of the comptroller over time without you affirming that in advance. At some point, we learned you could possibly opt out of the program, but there's no guarantee that you will get all of your money back. We also learned that the comptroller himself does not have to have a securities license to engage in this activity of deducting money from your payroll and creating investments for you to be able to participate in. And in fact, this whole program can exist with absolutely no involvement of the employee whatsoever. The original opting in happens automatically. The capture of the funds happens automatically. The increase over time of the deduction can happen automatically. And if you've got payroll deduction, you might just not find out for a long, long time that money's been taken out of your account. And when you do discover it, you might be in a very difficult position to recover it. And there's no guarantee that the investments that your money is being placed in are good investments. If you act on your own, you can do research. You can find out the return on investment of various different types of investment vehicles, whether it is a Roth IRA, as this mandates, or a traditional IRA, or some other type of investment vehicle, and there are many different types of investment vehicles in the world. We learned that the comptroller not only does not have to have the expertise or licensure, but that office is entrusted with the ability to make decisions that impact how these investments will turn out in the future. And there is nothing that would restrict the comptrollers advising the board. And maybe, as during our conversation, I don't think it was clear, but it seems to me that the comptroller will have some level of authority in determining what investment vehicles are used. There's nothing stopping that person from engaging in political maneuvering rather than choosing vehicles simply based on their financial record, because no one has the answer for how a financial investment is going to turn out in the future. We covered a lot of territory. And the final word from me is that this is unnecessary. It was unnecessary when it was passed originally. And it's even more unnecessary now that we've seen that very few people have decided to opt into this program, and that it's something that people can do on their own, that they don't need to engage the state government for this process. And I strongly encourage people to take an active role in their future and their retirement security. They absolutely should. But the fact of the matter is, there are people in this state government who don't believe they're smart enough to figure that out for yourself. And as a result, they think that they've been empowered to decide for you. I don't believe that's true. I believe that people should be left to their own devices and that government can be used for good to educate and inform. But it is not our role to decide for people decisions that they make. And as I mentioned, that goes for everything. That goes for what you put in your body, what choices you make about your education, your job, everything. You should decide those things. That's what it means to live in a free country, Mr. President. And because I believe in that freedom and that autonomy for individual citizens to make their own choices, I will reject this bill and the mandate that it creates on employers and employees in this state. Thank you.